McGlynn is in. I repeat, McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. This is the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with your host, John McGlynn.
Was that Herms?
He got them guests on the Rolodex, stopping by to talk about some Dynasty Superflex. Everybody, yo, commish is in. It's time to sit down to listen to John McGlynn. Yo, who we trading, who we fading, who we getting off the squad. Knowledge never overrated, playing for number one. And yo, McGlynn is in. It's time to let the fun begin. It's the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with John McGlynn.
Welcome to Commissioner Evaluation Show. I'm John McGlynn, and the show is also with the co-host with the mo-host, JT. What's up, JT?
Hey, man. Pumped. Final segment of our fantasy football roundup, looking at all the positions. Tight end, a position that would have been really boring to talk about 3 years ago, but I'm pumped today. All kinds of new infusion of talent, and I love it.
Tight end was a wasteland. This is segment 4 of 4 of our tight end offensive skill position player shows. We did quarterbacks first, and then running backs, and then wide receivers. Now here we are at the tight end position. So, who was your MVP of tight ends this year, JT?
So a lot of good players out there. Some of the guys got banged up and hurt. That kind of hurt their overall ranking as far as where they finished, things like that. I think you could have picked from a handful of guys this year. But for me personally, a guy I drafted wherever I could get him, and I thought was just for the price, he was just explosive. I took Sam Laporta, rookie tight end out of Iowa for the Detroit Lions. He wasn't the first tight end selected in the draft. He wasn't the second tight end selected in the draft. He was number 3. But I think he just had a monster year. I thought he would really fit this Lions offense well with TJ Hawkinson being traded away to the Vikings. And man, he did not disappoint. He ended up, as far as our Babies and Boomers League is concerned, he finished number 2 in scoring for a tight end, 305 points. He was 3 points behind Evan Ingram. He was number 1 in our league in scoring. Ingram had more receptions. So if you're in a catch-heavy league, I think Ingram maybe was your MVP. Laporta had a bunch more touchdowns than Ingram. That's why he was my MVP. He won you more weeks because of that. I thought he just had a phenomenal rookie year. I mean, usually we think you got to wait till year 2, year 3 for these tight ends to really, step up. That's usually what happens. In most leagues, he was number 1 in PPR. 86 receptions on 120 targets, 889 yards, 10 freaking touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. So just under 1,000 yards, just under 100 catches, 10 touchdowns for him. Sam Laporta, I got him in this league. I was pumped about it. I got him at 9.5 in this draft, and he was everything I could have hoped for and more. Absolutely phenomenal season. You break down his, game by game throughout the year. He had 10 top tight end 1 games, 10 of them. And then he had only 2 games in the 30s. Every other game was 17 or better. So he was an absolute play every week. Consistency. He only had 2 dud games all year that he didn't score double digits. He actually had 3 games he didn't score double digits, but 2 games were kind of duds. Absolute beast. He got you performance all year, and you probably didn't pay much for him. I just thought phenomenal year for him. And now the question is he maybe up there as tight end 1 in Dynasty now? Great year from Sam Laporta. Glad to have him on my team. He is my MVP at the tight end position for 2023.
I'm so pissed because I do have Sam Laporta in a handful of leagues, but at the same time, I was like this. And I had either 11, 12, or early in the second round picks that I traded for. So I was like, do I pick Roshan Johnson or Sam Laporta? I already have TJ Hawkinson. I already had this and that. So I wanted to diversify a little bit, not just have a ton of Sam Laporta. And I'm like, I'll take Roshan. And it's like one of those things where it's like, if you could stop and press the rewind button and go back to those drafts and just take the guy you wanted to take to begin with, instead of just worried about like the, portfolio dynasty or shit like that, just take the guy you want. It would have been so much better. So especially in these leagues, it's like 0.7. It's like 0.75 tight end premium or a full point tight end premium. Because in the league we're talking about, which is babies and boomers of the Mighty McGlynn Dynasty home leagues, it's a full point premium over half. It's a half PPR for wide receivers, 0.5.
1 point for running back.
Yeah, 1 point, and then a full 1.5 for tight ends. So tight ends are the receptions when you get a guy like a Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson or Kittle. These guys, they're doubling the points of the receiver. So the scoring system just is for a tight end. I should have done that, especially in a team that I was already winning with. I didn't need guys. I didn't need Roshan. I should have just took a tight end and built with that. But it is what it is. You live and you learn. It is what it is. But I
mean, just to show it in our league, Laporta was number 39 overall scoring in the league. That's every position combined. He was a top 40 player with 305 points. He was right there. He only had 5 points less than Jahmyr Gibbs. He had 6 points less than Tony Pollard. I mean, Puka Nacua, who had a monster year, rookie record everywhere at wide receiver. That's a wide receiver, and he still only had 7 points less than Puka. That's a pretty impressive season.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. It's absolutely fantastic. I don't know why people are so. Tight ends becoming more popular, like we were talking about before the show. It's becoming more popular, but it's still one of those things where you've been burned so many times by tight ends that you don't want to like just throw in the towel and sell the farm for these tight ends. But guys like Evan Ingram led our league in scoring points with 308 points. How many people had Evan Ingram, who had a good rookie season, didn't do shit for like 15 years, and then all of a sudden became good again because he went to the Jaguars? It's like
it feels like 15 years. I agree. That's so funny. Yeah, he was one of those guys. He was one of the rare breakouts as a rookie. We usually say, you're usually looking at year 3 or 4 for breakout for tight ends. He, as a rookie, was a top 5-6 tight end. Had a really nice season in 15 games for the Giants. Then he got banged up 2 years in a row, really dropped off. Then came back, didn't get hurt, but still didn't have a very good year. He dropped his last year for the Giants. He dropped all the way to tight end 24. He scored 100 points less than he did as a rookie in his 5th year in the league than he did as a rookie. I mean, you're just like, you're so disappointed. And then comes back, really solid year last year for the Jags. He was a top 5 tight end again. And then this year, monster game, depending on your scoring, he was either number 1 or number 2. He barely outscored Laporta in our league. Overall, half point PPR. Most scoring leagues, he was actually number 2 scoring behind Laporta. But like I said, they were right there neck and neck the whole time.
So in our Babies and Boomers league, this is how the points went. Evan Ingram led the league with 308 points, which was unforeseeable as far as I'm concerned. Sam Laporta came out of nowhere at 305. Travis Kelce, 297, which everybody's MFing the guy because he had a bad year. But literally he's 11 points behind Evan Ingram, who had a crazy season. So if this is a disappointing season for Kelce, then, whatever. TJ Hawkinson, 292, right behind Kelce. And then Njoku, another one.
Actually, it was Kittle, then Njoku.
Kittle, then Njoku, then Trey McBride, Cole Kmet, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid, Dalton Schultz, and then Taysom Hill, which he's a quarterback. He don't belong on this list. But
quarterback play side. So, that was our top 12. And whenever we talk about tight end 1 weeks, that's what we're meaning. We're meaning anybody that scored in the top 12, and he was basically a starter each week in our league. So when we mention that throughout the show, that's kind of what we mean.
So, but not quarterback 12, which is Taysom Hill, which doesn't really fair because he gets quarterback points too. But he was 111 points behind Evan Ingram, which is pretty big distance. There's
from 1 to 12, the same position. That's a pretty big, pretty huge difference. Also wanted to give a shout out to Chris B. Says, damn, you guys are really getting the grind today. Love it. Thanks, Chris. We appreciate you checking us out. We are, man. We're trying to put out this content here at the end of the year, getting through all our fantasy. Me and John, we've been online all day today, and we were talking about it off air, and we're like, man, I feel like we've only been talking for like 30 minutes. I feel like we just barely got started. We've been going all day. It just doesn't feel like it, man. I'm having a good time, John.
I literally, the last couple of shows, we're looking at this, like, hey, look, it's 48 minutes. I thought we were on the show for like 10 minutes. It's ridiculous.
I know, it's crazy.
We're having a great time today. But what players surprised you this year, JT, for as far as which tight ends did you not think were going to have the season they did? Or, you drafted and were like, holy cow, look what I got here. I found fool's gold, or I found gold.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yep. I think, obviously if you drafted Laporta, you were hoping he would be good eventually. I don't think you ever thought he was going to be, that guy. You didn't think he was going to be number one overall in scoring. So, I mean, I think you go there. That's obviously huge there. A guy for me, to be honest with you, that I thought was really surprising in a huge year was Cole Kmet. Now his numbers were pretty similar to last year, so it wasn't like he out of nowhere had this monster year and everybody's like, oh geez, like I didn't see that coming. He had pretty similar numbers. He finished as tight end 7 in a lot of leagues last year, and he was right in that range again this year. For us in our league, he finished right at tight end 7, right in that 7-8 range. But here's the thing people don't realize. He finished in almost the same spot, but he scored 50 points more this year. So even though he finished the same spot, he had 50 more points. He went from 50 catches for 544 yards and 7 touchdowns to 73 catches for 719 and 6 touchdowns, and really became, I think, solidified himself as the number 2 weapon for the Bears and Justin Fields behind DJ Moore. To me, again, it wasn't a shocking case that he has done this before, but I thought the fact that he stayed consistent and actually improved and really solidified himself 4th year in, 24 years old, it just feels like he's going to be one of those consistent guys right in that top 5 to 8 range for the next 4 or 5 years. So big fan of Cole Kmet there. That was my guy. The big shocker to me, the one that I felt like came out of absolutely nowhere, was Jake Ferguson for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, Jake Ferguson is a guy, rookie year, playing behind Dalton Schultz, showed some promise. He did all right, had about 60 points, 19 catches, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns. As a rookie, you're like, oh man, he'll possibly step in. But then they drafted Luke Schoonemaker from Michigan, and you're like, oh, is Ferguson really the guy if they're going out and drafting a tight end this high? Well, Ferguson took that and immediately said, nope, I'm the man. Came out, didn't have a great first or second game, but then he just started piling it on, ended up being super solid the entire year. He ended up with, right in that top 10 range, 8-9 range. He ended up with 102 targets, 71 catches, 761 yards, and 5 touchdowns, right there with Cole Kmet. Great numbers as a second-year starter for him. He's a guy now going forward with Dak you feel super confident in. He's a guy that was going cheap. He went 21st round in our Babies and Boomers draft. Guy 21st round, and now you get him as a top 8 tight end. Phenomenal. He was my absolute shocker surprise. And then he blew up in the playoffs with 3 touchdowns in round 1, and the Cowboys lost to the Packers. So now that pushes his value up, I think, even more going into the offseason.
Yeah, those are definitely surprises. Jake Ferguson is somebody that I liked a lot, but the Cowboys just have a knack for tight ends. I'm not sure, why it's always been that, that kind of situation there, but Jake Ferguson just seemed like someone that was going to pop, and sure enough, he did. But guys that I did not expect to pop that surprised me was, I knew Trey McBride was a good tight end. I wanted him everywhere. I traded him for in 3 leagues this year. I traded him before while Zach Ertz was still healthy before he got hurt. And McBride wasn't really doing much in the middle of the season. And then as soon as Ertz got hurt, that was it. Like, it was just this breakout of all breakouts. Like, yes, it's finally, bloomed. This guy that knew was super talented, was great in college, just never really had his chance behind Ertz in Arizona. And then here we go, gets his chance. Bam. He's never you're not getting the toothpaste back in the tube on that one. Trey McBride is here to stay. My biggest concern is possibly that they may draft a receiver, get a couple guys that come back healthy, and all of a sudden, like, he's still a tight end one, but not like right now. I see him in rankings as the tight end one, like even above Sam Laporta and stuff. And I'm like, there was nobody else on the team this year besides McBride. Like, nobody's really held, no good solid players. What happens if they draft, if they pick a receiver in their first number 3 pick or number 4 pick, whatever they have? What happens when that happens and there's a big competition on the field? What happens if they got 2 good receivers and now Trey McBride all of a sudden becomes the 3rd option? Or they get an Antonio Gibson catching balls out of the backfield, with receivers, and now Trey McBride falls into the 3rd or 4th option on the team. Now, I don't think that'll affect crazy amounts, but enough to not be the number. Not in the top like 5 or 6 tight ends. So I would not put him as my dynasty tight end 1 for that matter. But another person that I like is Cade Otton. Not that Cade Otton was a humongous fantasy like Goliath or anything like that, but he was on the field almost 100% of the snaps all the time because he knows how to block. He runs routes pretty well. I mean, he only had 2 weeks when he was not in the top, like a tight end 1, 2, or 3 player, because he's always on the field. He's always getting passes. He's always getting, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got 9 targets a couple of weeks. He's always on the field, even with Godwin in the middle of the field, even with making Mike Evans like a priority. Cade Otton is always on the field, and he's still 24 years old. He's 6'5", 250, 2 years in the league. He's always on the field. So I know anything past like, the big thing is anything past like tight end like 7 or 8 now. It used to be tight end 4 if you didn't have the big 4-year SOL. Now it's like tight end 7 or 8. Actually, it's a growing position. But Cade Otton is someone that I'd love to have on my team right now.
I love
for nothing, and he's someone that's going to be on the field for a long time because he does everything well. He's like a George Kittle like light, kind of something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the Cade Otton pick. I mean, he was a guy that was solid as a rookie and came back and was solid in his second year. 60 targets each the last 2 years, 42 catches, 391 and 2 touchdowns as a rookie, 47 for 455 and 4 touches this year. And then we just saw in the playoff game, they just pelted him all game. Baker Mayfield did in that playoff game. He got picked in the 19th round in our draft. He's a guy. I was just having this discussion with some other people today. They said, "Where's Cade Otton for you?" I said, I really think Cade Otton is as high as tight end 15 for me to start the year. I think he's just on the outside of one of those QB or wide tight end ones. I think he's just outside that with a high upside. You get another year with Baker with him. I just think, sky's the limit. I think he's a solid player. I just think he's going to just keep getting better. And like you said, John, lowest snap percentage he had all year was 91%.
Right.
I mean, the guy was like 95% plus all year. He's playing all the snaps, really solid. Did he break out and win you any weeks this year? Probably not. But I tell you what, he wasn't just giving you nothing. I mean, he had really like 2 pretty terrible weeks, 2-3 weeks where he basically scored you 1, 2, 3 points, but he was consistently giving you 8, 9, 10 points a game. I mean, he was right in the mix. I think they're going to work him in even more this next season. So I really like that. If you're looking for a cheap tight end option, I can't agree with you more. I just think he's absolutely phenomenal. And then just jump in real quick to go back to your McBride point. Once McBride took over in week in as like the tight end in week 8 against Baltimore, he absolutely crushed the last 10 weeks of the season. Yeah. Absolutely crushed. Baltimore game, he gets the first game where he takes over more than 50% share. He 82% snap share. He gets 10 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown, scores you 32 points in that game. A little regression the next game, 3 catches, 22 for 7 points, but then comes right back. Tight end 3, 8 catches, 131 yards, 32 points. The next week, 5 for 43. The next week, 7 for 60, 8 for 89 in a touch, gets you 28-9 against Pittsburgh. Then the bye week gets you 30 points after the bye against San Francisco, 10 for 102. I mean, I think this guy has every chance to be a top 5 dynasty tight end. I actually don't think it hurts them that if he gets a wide receiver on the outside. I think it helps because I think next year people are going to start game planning for him a little more because this year he kind of was a surprise. He's a guy I loved. And John, I can't get off this podcast without giving you props. I totally choked it. I had Laporta, Freiermuth, and McBride in this league. Was the one place I was stacked was tight end. And you convinced me, just hammering me with trade offer after trade offer. And eventually you talked me into it. And I traded you McBride in a 4th for Alec Pierce in a 3rd. And I'm hating myself so much because I was looking at my lineup and I'm like, man, how awesome will this lineup look next year with Laporta, Muth, and McBride as my starting tight end and my 2 flexes in a 1.5 tight end premium league. I
got it.
You're welcome, John. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. But I got him for Donald Parham in a 4th round pick in a different league right before he broke out this year also. So yeah, that's you gotta, like I said, you never know. You gotta send these trades out because I was a little
weak at wide receiver, and I was like, I got Porta Muth. I could probably move McBride. Should have stuck with him. Should have stayed with the talent. But man, yeah, huge breakout year for McBride. I think sky's the limit for him. I think Kyler Murray coming back is going to make him super, super valuable. So sorry to jump in on you on your guys, but had to throw a couple of those points in.
Not at all. Not at all. Which players disappointed you the most? Because I was all about Chig this year.
I had a buddy that was about Chig too, and he convinced me in a league, in a salary cap league, to go big on Chig. I wasn't completely sold. I actually thought he would be better because I thought they would use him a lot more across the middle with Tannehill until Levis was ready. But you're right, man. He did disappoint, didn't he?
Yeah. Like, I guess here's the thing. He ended up being like, I think he ended up being.
He was tight end 19 in our league.
Which in reality, a lot of tight ends after like we said earlier, from like 9 to like 20 is kind of all the same. They're mush mash, had their good weeks and their bad weeks, and that kind of deal. But I mean, he was only on the field for like 50% of the snaps half the games. That's one thing to be. It's one thing to be not good or just a blocker. Like there's some players who are really good who are just good block who's the guy that was on the Carolina for tons of years? He actually had his first couple tight ends this year.
Tommy Tremble.
I love Tommy Tremble, but it's all he does is block. His only touchdown the first couple of years was actually a rushing touchdown. He didn't even catch a ball. But like Parham's got to be on the field. I mean, Chig's got to be on the field more.
Well, I agree with you. I was looking at his stats. He only had 2 games where he had over 50 yards this season.
Yeah.
2 games over 50 yards. One game he had 3 catches for 62. Another game he had 6 for 63 and a touchdown. That was his only tight end one game all year. Was a 6 for 63 and a touchdown. He had 22.8 points that game. His only touchdown season. That's the thing with Chig. If you got him real late and you were thinking, oh, he's my backup tight end, then you probably weren't that disappointed. But a lot of people were taking him as tight end number 1. And that just people were taking it as like, hey, I'm going to start. I think I'm going to get really good production out of him. And he just really gave you nothing all year. He was very blah.
The problem was people thought that he was going to be like a Darren Waller on the Giants, where he was the only game in time, the only game in town, the only decent receiver on the whole team. And then they traded for Hopkins, and it was like, he just got completely nuked. So if there wasn't a Hopkins deal, that it probably would have been, Chig would have probably got a lot more action anyway, work wise as that's concerned. But another one was Mike Gesicki. I figured that when he went to the Patriots, this was going to be like, they don't have anybody. They don't have a quarterback with a big arm. They don't have a lot of good receivers on this team besides your boy Juju, who was probably the best option on the team, this year, but minus Pop Douglas, who came out of nowhere. But Gesicki was going to be he's going to open the middle of the field. He's super athletic. There's nothing about Mike Gesicki. I mean, he can't block. We all know that, but the Patriots didn't have him on the team to block. They needed a receiver. They needed someone to play the slot, and they traded for him, and they just never used him.
Mm-hmm.
Like Gesicki, he shows flashes. Like he's athletic as shit. He runs over the field. He runs decent routes. He's not the best route runner in the world, but he gets open. He gets separation. When he's covered by a linebacker anyway, but I don't know, he just disappeared, man. Like this year it was terrible watching him. Having him on my team was like I was this close to cutting him half the time. It wasn't dynasty, he'd be gone. But because it's dynasty league, I think he's going somewhere else. I had to keep him,
Yeah, I had 100% agree. I thought he was due. I was like, they don't have a lot of wideouts. It's him and Hunter Henry. They're gonna move him out to the slot because everybody knows he's not an inline guy. I'm like, oh, he's going to get all kinds of targets. They're going to figure out how to use him well, do all this stuff. Absolutely not. Completely disappeared. Again, like you said, if he wasn't young and it wasn't dynasty, if you were in a redraft league, he was your first cut. I mean, he absolutely was terrible. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't figure out how I can't figure out how they couldn't seem to use him. It blew my mind. Yeah, he was a huge disappointment this year.
He only had 3 games with over 3 targets at playing tight end. That's targets, not even receptions, just targets.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
They did nothing to try to get him the football. If he got a target, it was like, oh, random. Oh, I'm around. Oh man, I'll just chuck it at that guy. They didn't do anything to try to involve him specifically whatsoever.
Who disappointed you?
Big disappointments for me. Obviously those guys you talked about, I thought were disappointment. A guy, I'll just go to another Patriot. His running mate, Hunter Henry. Wild season for him for the Patriots. I mean, just all over the place. Like we just talked about, super thin wide receiver core. You thought that, hey, they're going to figure out how to use Henry. They're going to figure out how to use Gesicki. They're going to do it. The guy started out amazing, burst onto the scene, tight end 1 straight out of the gate week 1 and 2. Just 2 monster games to start the season and go, oh, okay, here's Hunter Henry. They are going to use him. Bam, I'm on a Hunter Henry. I'm playing him every week. Nope, just fell off completely after those first 2 games. It was just terrible. He put back-to-back top 3 tight end games in weeks 14 and 15. So you're like, oh, here we go. He's back at it. Nope. Then he ends up missing the rest of the season with an injury after that. So he has the 2 big weeks in week 1 and 2 and the 2 big weeks in 14 and 15. And then eventually finishes around tight end 20. I just thought we were going to get much more out of him than that, especially after the start. I was like, hey, this guy's going to be, legit. He's going to be the guy that everybody thought he was going to be when the Patriots gave him a huge deal. And he just wasn't.
Was not at all. How does both tight ends suck? How does everybody?
That's the only thing. I don't know how. I figure at least maybe one of them would have a big year, and the other one would end up sucking. But neither one of them had a good year. And like I said, he had a tight end 1, a tight end 2 game, and 2 tight end 3 games where he scored over 20 in all those 4 games. But once you take out those 4 games, he was pretty atrocious. I mean, middle of the year, 2 targets, 1 game, 0 points. 3 targets, 1 catch, 7 yards. 3 targets, 2 catches, 27 yards. 3 targets, 3 catches, 28 yards. 5 targets, 3 catches, 21 yards. I mean,
yeah,
it's just terrible numbers. I mean, and then he ended up missing the last 3 games. He was one that was super disappointing, especially after the good start. He killed me. The other one was Tyler Higbee. Now, Tyler Higbee wasn't terrible by any means. You probably didn't super overpay for him, but he was the guy I was talking up all off season. I thought Tyler Higbee with, Cooper Kupp was going to be the only guy, didn't know Puka was going to blow up the way he did. I figured Higbee was going to be number 2 option on the Rams. That was the guy they were going to go to. I was drafting him and taking him late everywhere. Any league I didn't get an early good tight end, I was like, screw it. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to take Tyler Higbee late. That's what I thought. I thought, hey, man, we're going to be good. I mean, he was a top 10 guy in 2021. So I was like, okay, hey, here we go. He's like, he's going to be in the mix. I like him. I like what he's done. Nope. Drops all the way down to tight end 24 this year. even though the offense was way better this year than they were last year. They were awful last year. And again, he ended up being worse. I don't know how that happened. He had a handful of top 10 tight end weeks, but outside of those, he was basically like low 20s and 30s. So, I mean, he had a couple good games that helps you out, but outside of those good games, he basically was like Hunter Henry. He was giving you 2 catches, 1 catch, 2 for 20, that kind of thing. It was just super disappointing. He didn't even get a touchdown until week 12 against Arizona. He went 5 catches, 29 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He ended up being 22 points and being tight end 1 that week, but the 2 touchdowns is what saved him. And that was the only reason he finished that high. Really disappointing season all around for me, especially how much I was pushing him and picked Tyler Higbee.
My honorable mention here is just Gerald Everett, because Gerald Everett was someone I really wanted to pick up in the offseason, but that's just an honorable mention guy. I don't want to go too in depth on that. Next disappointing tight end that I'd like to draft all the time or have on my team that just roster cloggers almost at this point in time, but it is what it is. So there's a lot of influx coming in the league right now, and we had the rookie performances. Top 5 anyway. Sam Laporta, 305 points in our Babies and Boomer scoring system. Dalton Kincaid, 200. Tucker Kraft, 102. Luke Musgrave, 99. Michael Mayer, 93. Tucker Kraft is somebody that there was a lot of back and forth about who's going to be the better tight end on this team. And Tucker Kraft kind of wasn't not that I was so much surprised. Just it was almost like 50-50 which tight end was drafted was going to be the better on that team. And Tucker Kraft kind of seems like the better tight end right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, Musgrave dealt with injuries. That was the big knock on him coming out of college. He never played a full season. He had been knocked around. He had been hurt. He was more of a playmaker, speed, athletic guy. Kraft was more of an inline blocker, a little more hard-nosed guy. I mean, you put them together, they end up with a Dalton Kincaid season. I mean, they're a top 10 combined. Too bad you can't do that. But yeah, I mean, they were pretty solid. I mean, I thought Dalton Kincaid, for all the hype in the first round draft capital that the Bills spent on him and everything else, I was taking him in the end of the first round in a ton of leagues where I had a late first round pick. I was all Dalton Kincaid. I thought he had a fantastic rookie year. He finished 10th overall. Really nice, solid season. I think he's a guy on his way up. I think they're going to use him even more as the year goes, as next year comes on. I mean, 73 catches, 671 and 2 touchdowns. 8th round pick in our league. Got off to a kind of a slow start, but man, he had a couple down games late in the year, but he had some pretty solid games. A couple 80-yard games, had a 10-catch, 81-yard performance against the Bengals in week 9 was his top year. He ended the year on a high note. He was tight end 3 as he had 7 catches for 84 yards for a 20-point performance against Miami in week 18. So he's a guy I think that they're going to figure out how to mix him in more and more coming in next year. And maybe he didn't give you all you thought by getting a first round pick, but to me, first round rookie, anytime you get a rookie tight end that finishes top 10, I think you just got to really be happy about that.
Yeah. Well, which rookie did you think was going to come in and blow up the league and just really disappointed you? Like, not that tight ends ever really do come in and blow up the league, as far as that goes, but who did you think this year was going to be someone that was really going to make a impact on your fantasy roster?
A guy that I didn't think was going to make a huge impact this year, but I had a lot of hope for in the future, was Darnell Washington out of Georgia. The Steelers took him in round 3 of the NFL draft. Everybody thought it was an absolute steal.
Yeah, hold on. We're talking about tight ends, not left tackles, right? We're talking about guys.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. Now that you say that, I mean, everybody thought there was some hype around him maybe being a late first round pick going into the draft. He ends up dropping in round 3, ended up having some knee issues when they did his physical. So he dropped a little bit. I didn't think he was going to be a huge factor this year with Pat Freiermuth in front of him. But I thought, hey, man, he's going to be a good red zone target. He's going to be a good blocker. He's going to be a guy they're going to kind of mold and use the 2 tight end set. He really looked more like a project than I thought. I mean, the guy's an absolute beast, physical monster. He blocked pretty well, but he wasn't as good of a blocker as I think they thought he was going to be. He missed a lot of those defensive ends on plays that, Najee Harris was getting hit in the backgrounds because he didn't pick up the block. So he just, for me, even with Pat Freiermuth with the injuries, missing a decent amount of time, you thought that might, speed track him to having a better year and kind of get in the mix. And he ended up going behind Connor Hayward, who kind of is a fullback / tight end. Connor Hayward kind of jumped in and took over Freiermuth's spot. Washington really didn't get any extra snaps out of it. He, to me, looks like a much bigger project, long-term project, than I would originally thought for the Steelers.
Yeah. I get it. He's going to be somebody that I'm going to wait a couple years and see how he kind of, I have no problem waiting on him to develop because he's not really I don't think he's a really good route running receiver anyway. He's a great blocker. I mean, great blocker. And especially with the Steelers running back situation, it's great to have a guy like that who is a huge, that can block and is on the field all the time. But I don't think he's ever going to be, he's going to be this guy that stays in and blocks, while Muth goes out and catches balls. And that's just kind of how it is. It is what it is. But
I mean, just to kind of tell you how raw he was, he played all 17 games for the Steelers this year. He scored 18.6 fantasy points total. That's not one game. That's 18 points on the entire year. He had 7 catches on 10 targets, 61 yards, 0 touchdowns. I took him 19th in our league. This year I drafted him. Like I said, I thought he was kind of one of those guys I'd work in the system. But again, I think he is insanely raw. He finishes tight end 80. Tight end 80. Whew. Usually that's a guy you cut in every sense of the word. You cut that guy, don't keep him. I'm going to give him some years to kind of grow. But like I said, I just think he's a much bigger project than originally anticipated.
My disappointment was I thought maybe the Cowboys were looking to improve Jake Ferguson a little bit before Jake Ferguson became Jake Ferguson. So when they drafted Shoemaker, I was like, okay, this is the guy for the future for the Cowboys. I thought he was going to come in and make a huge impact, and Jake Ferguson just took the job and ran with it. It wasn't even close. So I guess that's me evaluating somebody wrong. So I like Shoemaker in college too, but I didn't know that he was just going to get completely off the radar in Dallas. He had multiple games.
That's why I was down on Ferguson, and that's why he was my big surprise. I thought with them things I thought they were going to share a lot of time. I thought that was going to be a pretty wide open tight end room and tight end job. And that's just, like I said, when they drafted him, I was like, maybe they don't like Ferguson as much as we thought. Well, that's why I was wrong, because I thought the same thing as you, John.
Yeah, it is what it is. But did you say your rookie disappointments already?
Yeah, that was my disappointment was basically Darnell Washington. He was my main disappointment. And you said Schoonemaker. To me, anybody else on the list, there wasn't really worth listing, because I don't think anybody was really, Michael Mayer maybe had a little bit of a down year compared to what people thought he would do. I thought it would take him some time in that offense. I mean, he still finished as tight end 5 as far as rookie scoring, right under 100 points. I wouldn't call him a total disappointment yet. I just think the only reason he looked kind of disappointing was because Kincaid and Laporta were so freaking good.
Yeah.
That made him look disappointing. I think in a regular year, you don't really look at that Mayer, what he did, and think is that disappointing.
Mayer was part of a trade that I made with I think it was with Nick. I got rid of anyway, I imported Michael Mayer and Brandon Cooks, and I was super happy because Michael Mayer at the position, I think he's super underrated this year. I mean, it really sucked losing a pretty decent running back, but I think over time Michael Mayer is going to pan out longer and better than just having it was Rashad White. It was Rashad White who I traded away, which kind of sucks, but it was early in the season where Rashad White didn't pop yet. It was just receiving. But man, I think that Michael Mayer's career is going to way outlast Rashad White's. So I'm okay with that now. It sucks. I got burned this year, but Mayer is one of my buy lows for 2024 because of the fact that he didn't shine. He had some pretty good games, but I feel like he's super underrated, and he's going to be a pretty decent size, pretty decent chunk receiver next year, especially because I think Devontae Adams will probably be gone to the Jets, maybe, hopefully, when they come out with a new regime. He's not going to want to be on a rebuilding team, So I think Mayer is going to be someone that you should buy super cheap right now. Another one is Luke Musgrave, because, again, we just said about the Kraft. I think Kraft is in the spotlight right now, and people are forgetting about Luke Musgrave. But I think in reality, Luke Musgrave is my preference of the two tight ends in the team. So if I was going to low buy anybody, it would be Michael Mayer right now and Luke Musgrave as the two guys who are still young, really good tight ends, and kind of under the radar right now because of all the Laporta and Kincaid and everybody else kind of hype going on right now.
Yep, I agree with you there. I like Musgrave. If he can stay healthy, I feel like he's the more athletic, big play guy.
Who's your buys for 2024?
So buys for me, if you got anybody that's down on Pat Freiermuth, he had a tough year with injuries, his worst production of his entire career. He's a guy I was big on. I thought he was going to be a top 5 tight end for sure this year. Just never really got together. There was times where he just got lost in the offense and they just never even looked his way. He's a guy I like. If you can get him cheap, if somebody's out on him after watching the Steelers, they don't like Kenny Pickett. They think the quarterback situation's bad. I think if you could buy him, he's a decent buy. He would have cost you way more to buy going into the season than I think you get him this off season. So I think he's a guy that I would look at. I tell you what, another guy that I'm kind of leaning on. This is a long shot here, John. I'm going to throw 2 long shots at you. One of them's Daniel Bellinger, the third-year guy out of San Diego State. He's on the New York Giants, backing up Waller. I just don't know if we ever get another healthy season out of Waller. And when Waller was out, Bellinger was getting like 80% of the snaps. He's a guy that's athletic. He got bigger. He got stronger this last year. He's going into that third-year breakout. And again, if I think Waller ends up being hurt, not be able to do it, I just think Daniel Bellinger is a guy that could end up being pretty solid, and he is extremely low cost. I mean, you can get him for dirt cheap right now. So he's a guy I like to go out there and try to acquire. Another guy that kind of got lost in the mix, a guy that everybody kind of was on the bandwagon coming into the season, was Jelani Woods, the second-year tight end out of Virginia for the Indianapolis Colts. People kind of thought he was going to take over. He was a good red zone target in his rookie year. He ended up getting hurt in the offseason before the season started. He ended up missing the entire year. But I think Mo Allen Cox is gone. Kylan Granson got a shot to kind of take over that role. He was very okay this year. He didn't just grab it. I thought he might grab it and be like, I'm the tight end. He didn't really grab that role. Mallory, the rookie out of Miami, played a decent amount. He had some solid games. So I just think that that tight end position's wide open. I think Jelani Woods, a former high school quarterback, real athletic, huge guy, 6'8", 270. I think he could be an absolute red zone beast with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Teams all just committing to the run and bam, pop it over top to Jelani Woods. He's a guy I want to take a shot on, especially after missing the whole year. People kind of forgot about him. He's fallen out of favor. You should be able to get him a lot cheaper this offseason than you did last offseason. I'm willing to take the chance that he comes over, takes the tight end 1 role. I don't ever think he's going to be a big receiver as far as possession where he's going to get 50, 60, 70 catches a year. But I think he's a guy that could get you 45, 50 catches, 400 to 500 yards, and he could get you maybe that 6-7 touchdowns as a big red zone target. And again, I think he's way cheaper to acquire this year than he was the last 2.
Man, I just feel like the Giants this year, like Bellinger he had nothing but almost no competition when Waller was out. There's no receivers on the team. There was nothing going on, and he still couldn't even. Most of his performances were like tight end 25 to 40. Like it's like,
the only reason I'm taking him, like you said, the only reason I'm taking him is I like the snap share, and I think he's growing. I mean, he wasn't a guy that got a ton of targets in college. I think he's still kind of learning the position. I mean, he was tight end 48 in our league, 47, something like that. I mean, he was a guy getting 1 target a game. I mean, he had 1 game of 5 targets. Everything else was like 2, 1, 2. The whole rest of the way. But he was when Waller was out, he was getting 89, 90, 95% snap share. As long as Waller's there, I don't think you can use him in at all. If you're in a redraft, there's no way I would take him. But if you're looking for a stash in Dynasty, again, he's my long stash. I don't know if he'll ever hit, but he's a guy I like for the cost to acquire right now cheap in case Waller again goes back to the IR like he has the last 3-4 seasons.
I'm only saucy because I got him everywhere. I traded everywhere to get him, and he just burned me this year. And I expected something out of him, you know.
Hey, hold, John. I know what you like to do. I know you get crazy, and you're like, "Nope, he burned me. I'm trading him everywhere." Don't trade him unless it's to me. And then everywhere else, you need to hold him. Hold him because this could be the year. Because we're gonna get on this pod next season. You're gonna trade him away to everybody. He's gonna start playing well, and you're gonna be like, "I knew I should have kept him," and you're gonna be mad that you traded him everywhere.
You are correct, sir. Who's your top sells for 2024?
Top sells for me, Travis Kelce, if you can still sell him. Again, he didn't have a bad year this year. He just didn't have that absolute dominant year that we've seen the last couple of years. So him being tight end 3 is like a monster disappointment in most people's eyes. And he had a good start to the season, tailed off near the end. So, you know, if you had the Mahomes Kelce stack, they gave you nowhere near what they gave you in 2022. I mean, you were disappointed all around. If you can still get something for him, if anyone's willing to give you a first or throw it in with a trade, do some stuff, I'm getting rid of Kelce if I can at this point. He's got 2 years left on his contract. I don't think he'll retire. His brother just retired. I don't know if that means he will too. I think he plays because he's still got getting like 25, 28 million the next couple of years, but he's right at the end there. He's a guy, if I can get something for him, I'm going to move him. Another guy, I mean, I don't even know. I shouldn't even be saying this. Noah Fant. He's been I don't even know if you could get anything for him at this point, but unless he gets a new situation, they just don't use him in Seattle. I'd love to see him maybe on another team that would, you know, kind of make him a little more prominent in the offense. He's shown glimpses. He just never consistently gets enough target share in Seattle. Maybe that changes with Carroll out. Maybe they use him somewhere else. I don't know, but he's another guy. I don't know if you could get much for him, but he's a veteran that I maybe would sell if you got somebody just absolutely desperate for tight end in a tight end premium, like a start 2 tight end league.
I don't get that. He was a first round pick and early declare, runs a 4.5 40. Like, what is going on with Noah Fant? How does it not? I'm 100% agree with you on this one. Like, where does he just? How big?
It blows my mind. I've got him all over the place. I just still can't. It's even more frustrating is when you see the 3rd string tight end for the Seahawks catching 50 yarders downfield, and you're like, why is that not Noah Fant? It's like, so like, again, I don't hate Noah Fant as a player. I actually think he's good. I just think he's not being utilized correctly. I still think he's got talent. I still think he could do something. It's just Seattle, unless they change their offensive system, he's got to go somewhere else before he can do it. He's not too old yet. You know, he's not a complete, you know, total done with him because he still does have ability. But again, he finished tight end 34 in our league this year. It just, the game log was just brutal. I mean, he was 50% snap share pretty much all season. I mean, he was never just the guy at tight end. I mean, he had a 200-point season. He was top 12 3 years ago. I mean, this last season was his absolute worst season. Lowest target share ever, 43, 32 catches, 414 yards. First season of his career with 0 touchdowns. I think he can be utilized so much better. The thing is, he feels like he's old. He's only 26.
Yeah.
He's been in the league 5 years, came out as 21-year-old, 26. Usually this is when guys start hitting. You know, John, if he gets moved from Seattle, I could turn myself around into a buy candidate.
1,000%.
Instead of selling Fant, I could talk myself into buying Fant coming back the other way. It's just he's just been so frustrating the last couple of years because you just thought you had a stud and he just hasn't been.
Yes, 1,000%. I'm actually eyeballing him right now. I'll find a spot on my roster to keep him around until next year starts. You know, I'll trade a couple decent young receivers away, or you know, receivers that you know aren't going to pan out right now, or something like that, or an older, maybe less productive tight end or something like that, but I think that people are looking to just, shit can Noah Fant right now anyway. And I'm here to buy that. I'm good with that. So
what about you? What are your, who are your sell candidates here for the offseason?
I think people saw like Darren Waller came back from his injury, his hamstring injury, his reoccurring hamstring injury, and he actually had a couple decent games to finish the season. And he did very well when he played earlier in the season too, but he's definitely somebody that I have to part ways with now. I feel like New York's going to make some changes, and I don't think he'll be the entire focus of the entire offense, anymore going forward. So, and that was his big shining star to pick him up this year, was that he was the only game in town. So that's why he was so attractive. But I just think that this was his big opportunity to kind of really go out and be a solid, which he was solid. Don't get me wrong. He did okay when you played him, but man, if you want to win now team and traded for Darren Waller and he got hurt half the season, you couldn't even use him. It was kind of like shit. That's enough to not get a playoffs.
Yeah, missed 5 full games, a 6th game where he got hurt right in the middle of the year, right when you needed him. That's why I'm saying I'm on Bellinger there. And again, even when he did play, he did have some decent games. His best game was a tight end 3 game against Washington, 27-8. He had 7 catches for 98 yards and his only touchdown of the season. One TD is all he got this year. He had one game where he had 8 catches for 86 yards, 22 points. Those were his only 2 20-point games of the season. And then he had an 18-point game, 6 for 76 early in the year. And then everything after that was single digits, or he just barely inched in to the double digits in a couple games at the end of the year.
Yeah, another one right now is Dalton Schultz, just because of the fact that I'm hoping and praying that his backup becomes a actual tight end next year. So this is, I think Dalton Schultz he played very good this year, but that offense is changing now. It's becoming more wide receiver focused instead of tight end focused. But Schultz made a lot of, he had a lot of good plays. Don't get me wrong, but I just have a feeling that like you're going to see Brevin Jordan. But I think he's going to break out soon. I think Brevin Jordan is due for like a breakout of some sort. Now we had talked pre-show about some, why he may, a couple of reasons why he may not be panning out, but I think they really, really, really want to see Brevin Jordan pan out in Houston. I think they're going to try to make it a thing, but Dalton Schultz is just a better player this year. I don't think that happens next year. I think Brevin Jordan possibly, one more year with a good offense and less competition. I'm kind of thinking that Brevin Jordan is someone who the Texans want to be the focus of a big part of the offense anyway, in the middle of the field. So just spread the ball around. So Brevin Jordan is someone I want on my team, and I think Schultz is going to kind of slowly start fading away.
Yeah, I think Brevin Jordan going in his 4th year, only 23 years old, so 3 years in the league. 4th year, if he can kind of figure out the system, the guy's got crazy athletic ability. I hear Dalton Schultz, number 11 in our league this year in scoring, played 15 games, was right around 200 points. The thing with Dalton Schultz is I think Dalton Schultz is Dalton Schultz. I think he's solid. I just don't think we're ever going to see that monster year again. I mean, his biggest year was 2021 with Dallas. He had 78 catches on 104 targets, 808 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think that's absolutely the max for him. I don't think he'll ever get there again. He's been more in that 50 catches, 500 range with like 5 touchdowns. So solid, but not just, he's not going to be a huge guy for you. I've traded him in a couple leagues. He had a couple monster games this year that kind of really held his stats, but man, he had a lot of games. He was just sitting in that. He was at 3-4 catches, 30, 40 yards. He's sitting in, he's getting you 8, 9, 10 points. Just okay, but nothing great. I mean, he had two big games this year. 2 big games, got most of the stats. I mean, the Tampa Bay game, 10 catches, 130 and a touchdown, was tight end 1 with 39 points. And then week 5 against Atlanta, he was 7 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown, 24.5 points. Those were his 2 big games. That was tight end 1 and tight end 2 performances. A lot of other games he was in tight end in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. He had a couple tight end 2 games. But he got fairly touchdown dependent there for a little while. If he got a touchdown, he had a good game. If he didn't, you're looking at, 1 catch, 2 yards, 1 game, 2 catches, 19 yards, another game. So he's a guy. I agree with you. I would, if I could sell off Dalton Schultz, and get a decent return, I probably would.
The only thing that concerns me is that they might bring in another receiver across from Nico Collins, like another, and somebody that all of a sudden relegates the tight end position to like the 3rd best or even 4th best position on the field. That's one thing that scares me about it.
Yeah, I just don't think we're ever going to see those 100 targets for Dalton Schultz ever again. I think he's going to be in that 70, 75, 80 target range. And I agree with you. I think we've seen the max of what he can do. He's going to be a 5,500 and 3 or 4 or 5 guy. If you can sell high on him, that's what I would do.
Yes. JT, it's under an hour. Do you believe it?
Finish it strong, John.
You're a magic man. I don't know how you did it. Well, thanks for joining us for these. This was number 4 of 4 of our offensive players. We had quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and we just finished out the tight ends. So give them all Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. They'll all be out. Watch them. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a rate and review, all that stuff. JT, where can everybody find you at?
Yep. Find me on the X at JT Orange. Always chatting it up over there. And you can check out my show, The Stew with JT Brew, on dynastyprosfootball.com and their YouTube channel. And also you can go subscribe to that. Subscribe to this. You can find all my stuff on all the places you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Google, all that stuff.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Evaluation on YouTube, on Fantrax, on all the podcast networks. Please subscribe. Please, all that stuff. It's much appreciated. And we will talk to you later. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to these episodes. Later.
Thanks. See you guys later.